Okay, well, let us begin. Everybody's signed in? Oh my goodness. I think I had better when I was able to do this. Okay, so let us move down. We're down to slide 5, please. Okay, general information here. What we would like is when someone else is speaking and you want to chime in, please use your chat box, and the narrator will, either Wayne or myself will call on you and provide you the opportunity to talk. I'm getting a lot of feedback, so with each of you, please check to make sure your computer and headsets aren't working at the same time. Thank you. Or put yourself on mute, that's great. Some of you put yourself on mute, and that helped a lot. Any questions and comments and recommendations, they're all welcome. And everyone's experience is valued, so please share and allow time for others to share as well. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So what I'd like you to think about while we're walking through the PowerPoint is think about your first days in a brand new position. And were you provided the courtesy of an orientation and an onboarding? What were your feelings? Were you afraid? And so those will give you some idea about where we want to go with presenting this checklist for you. So the first learning outcome that we would like to be able to pass along to you is understand the importance of developing a standard orientation for new staff. 2, reduce the high turnover of AIVRS staff by providing clear guidelines of the AIVRS and the tribal policy. And 3, ensure that the new hire is provided in-depth information on tribal vocational rehabilitation. And I think we can't stress that one enough. You wouldn't ask someone that is painting your house to paint it with a artist paintbrush. The paint is just going to be either a roller or a spray or whatever. So you want to make sure you're giving your staff the tools that they need to be successful. Next slide, please.
So before we go to the next slide, Suzanne, I want to interrupt. Can you guys look on your screens, and if you take your mouse down to the lower part of the screen that we're on, you'll see a microphone come up. Will you please click that microphone and mute your sound? We're getting a lot of feedback as we're talking.
Thank you, Wayne. And in actuality, we really want to now go to Jacqueline and Marla and Carol and Camila. Please find the microphone. Okay, we need to go to the website now. That would be our next adventure. So Wayne's going to put a Google up on the screen. And well, actually, I wanted to show you when you get a Google screen, there it is. So in this part right here where it says google.com, you're going to put, well, or down there, you're going to put aivretech.org and hit enter. And okay, so here's the screen that is going to come up if you want this document. And then you're going to hit resources, and then you're going to drop down to products and tools. Is everybody seeing this okay? And go a little bit slow so we don't make people dizzy, Wayne. Okay, go down a little bit further. And a little bit further. And okay, here we are. Is everybody seeing that, or does that need to be enlarged? I'm hoping you can all see it. So click on the red highlighted area, AIVRS Orientation Checklist. Then you go to the left-hand corner and you click on it and open it. And there you are. This is the checklist that we will be reviewing today. And when you look at it, you can break it down into 4 pieces or 2 pieces. The first part of it is the employee's name, the date of hire, job title, and supervisor's name. And the next part, which has multiple little boxes you can check off, is what most organizations provide to new hires. They provide maybe a tour of the land, ensure a new hire, forms have been completed, making sure the guidelines of programs are there, assignments are done, policies and procedures for both the tribe and the VR program, and an introduction to the human resources department and their policies and procedures. So it's just everything that a staff member would need to know about how the overall organization of the tribe works. And a lot of times you might even have a chart where it shows tribal council and then, you know, like all of the different departments and where does your vocational rehabilitation program come out? Does it come out under education or the social services of the tribe? And as we move down to the next section, and then this is the meat, the heart of what we're talking about today. What you really, and you can look at this in terms of when you're developing a personnel chart where somebody, you know, that for training purposes. So what we have here is you're going to be sharing your vision and mission statement. You're going to be sharing the purpose. Can anybody in the chat box write what the purpose of VR is all about? Why are we here? Why are we doing what we're doing? I think this is really, Wayne and I have been chatting about that particular part, and it's not, you know, Jimmy Warren used to say VR is not about vehicle repair. You know, what are we about? What is our purpose? Why are we here? I'd appreciate seeing some notes in the chat box and maybe later hearing your voices about that. And then you're looking at all of the services that you'll be providing and what is your VR process? Are you going to be explaining what is case management? What does it mean to you? Comparable service, confidentiality. Who are your partners in comparable services? What kind of policies do you have that recognizes confidentiality? These are all important processes that you want to make sure that this new staff person is going to be introduced to. Be aware that in some cases, this might be the first time that your employee is even hearing anything about vocational rehabilitation. They might be in a different discipline, as social service or behavioral health, but for some reason, when they looked at your job announcement, decided that this was the program they wanted to work in, and you said you wanted to create a partnership with this particular person, and so you hired them. The next step would be, you know, making sure that everybody's understanding where everybody is, that there's been good dialogue back and forth. Questions are asked and answered, and be honest. If you don't know the answer to something, say, I'll get back to you with it, right? And then by signing the document, there is an agreement, an affirmation that says the orientation has been provided and the opportunity for questions were made available and they were answered and or researched. And then it's signed by the employee and dated, and that goes in their permanent file. It's a pretty straightforward document. I was looking at it again this morning, and I see a few things that we might want to add to the bottom in terms of there's been a lot of dialogue about post-employment services, and I don't see that on here. And this, you know, it would be something really good to have on here because we need a better understanding of it. It's very vague in the regulations, and most people you have to develop your own. And so we really would like to make sure that that's in there. So in terms of this particular document, this document, we have completed the orientation checklist. And now I would like to turn it over, and we would be probably resuming on slide 10. You can close out this window, which is the webinar, not the webinar window, the AIVRS window, Wayne, and then we can get on to the other.
So we had 3 people respond about
great.
the purpose of AIVRS. Amanda stated we are to help remove barriers to employment and subsistence for our consumers on or near their reservation or village. Myrna stated we are here to learn and engage in the best possible services we can provide to our participants. Giselle stated to assist people with disabilities to prepare for, obtain, and maintain employment.
These are awesome answers. Thank you. Big cheers. Great job. Thank you for participating and giving those answers. They're really good answers. Can we move out of this window and get on to the next? Yes. And now we'll be opening the PowerPoint, and we will move down to slide 10, and that will be the onboarding. And we can thank Winona Reed for the next slides, because she prepared the tool for another webinar. And so, so we thank you, Winona, and it's all yours, Wayne. Thank you.
Okay, so we went through the orientation checklist, and that just kind of gives you the groundwork of how to, or the tool to develop the structure that you're going to help people learn about the program and some of their responsibilities. That really ties in with the onboarding component that we wanted to include in this presentation, because the onboarding is what really allows the new employee the time to adjust and learn their position. So we have 2 things here, 2 definitions: onboarding, which is the process of helping new hires adjust to social and performance aspects of their new jobs quickly and smoothly, to learn the attitudes, knowledge, skills, and behaviors required to function effectively. And then orientation is where you set this, is a stage of onboarding where new employees learn about organization, the tribe, and their job responsibilities. So you can see there's 2, they're very similar, but they're also very separate in their approach. The onboarding is a series of events which we include orientation in, and it really helps the staff learn how to be successful in their day-to-day job. And why this is important is because we see such a huge turnover in the VR field. I've worked in the state VR system, and I've worked in the tribal VR system, and the turnover is substantially higher in the tribal system because of the instability of funding and that type of thing, which unfortunately is going to be just part of our life. But you see turnover in the VR, state VR world also because of the steep learning curve. And the onboarding allows some of that learning curve to be smoothed out a little bit, so it's not a 90-degree learning curve. It's maybe a 45 instead of a 90. The orientation is a one-time event where you welcome the person to your program. So that's where they come in, and you use the checklist, and you tour the facility and that type of thing. Onboarding can take, up to several weeks to complete. There's 5 components of onboarding: the orientation, compliance, clarification, the culture, and the connection. And if you are able to provide those 5 components and able to really help the person understand those 5 components, stability is going to increase rapidly in your program. So it's important that we take that time to help people understand those 5 components. Okay. Suzanne, did you leave a chat? Okay, so the short and
Yes,
long, okay, thank you.
sorry.
It flashed on my screen and then it went away. So short and long-term outcomes of onboarding. The short-term outcomes, we're looking, the employee can adjust self-efficiency or self-confidence in their job performance. There's a role clarity. It allows the employee to understand the new role and their expectations. The social integration, this is where you start to meet your coworkers. That's just the short term. Long term is we see higher job satisfaction, organizational commitment, lower turnover, higher performance levels, and career effectiveness, and lower stress. So when we start talking about our grants, a lot of people don't underestimate the importance of the onboarding because of our short term funding cycles, where every year we can experience that instability with our funding. And every 5 years we have great instability in the funding. While we can't control those aspects, we can control the longer term effect of higher performance levels, lower turnovers, if we allow our people the time to get to know their roles and their positions, and they feel supported and almost comforted in the fact that we take this time to help them get into that position. It was interesting because Suzanne and I, when we decided to provide this orientation presentation this time, we were talking about how directors have that same situation where they don't have the support. And I think that's why we see a lot of turnover in the director's chair. When I came on as a director, I didn't have any of the structure in place. When Suzanne came on as the director, she didn't have any structure in place. And it was really through a few key players in our AIVRS family that allowed us the opportunity to ask questions that helped us become more efficient in our position. So this is everybody from the director to the VR counselor, to the employment specialist, to the tech, to the admin assistant. This really helps everybody stabilize. All right, so I went too far, sorry. As we move forward with our webinars, we've decided that we want to have more interaction with you guys and allow you guys the time to share personal experiences. So now I would like to take a few minutes and just open up the floor. We can take your stuff off mute. Just remember to be courteous and let other people talk, and then you talk. But we want to hear some of the struggles that you've had with new orientation of new employees. If you've had any experience with the onboarding, can you see the impact of the instability and the funding impact in your employment life of your employees? Just any of those things, we just want you to be able to share that with us.
Wayne, Tanya has asked, are there slides available on this webinar?
Yes, this will be.
Yeah, it will be there. And then Amanda, would you like to talk instead of one of us reading it? Amanda, that message that I sent out, I put down, what is your process? I was asking anyone to share what their orientation or onboarding, what is their process? And Amanda jumped right in there and she's ready to talk. Go girl.
Hi,
Hi.
Amanda Race. I'm with Tanana Chiefs Conference, book rehab director since 2008. And so Tanana Chiefs, 20 years ago, your supervisor just trained you or provided orientation to you. So we hired a new counselor almost about 2 years ago, and they go through a 2.5-day orientation. It's usually Monday, Tuesday, and half of Wednesday. They learn about how TCC works, the history of TCC, all the programs, our health side, and then I believe HR did give me like a little checklist to show our new staff how to run the copier, how to do the time. Well, they already know how to do time cards when they come to us. It was a little easy with that one because she was transferring from a different program, so she'd already gone through some orientation already.
Mm-hmm.
But the first thing I had her do was read the Voc Rehab grant from cover to cover. We've got some bits and pieces of old trainings that are still relevant that we also use for external evaluation, and that's part of when Dick Corbridge was, well, he was with RSA, and then when he was an independent contractor. So I think the last big training we had with him here in Alaska was 2014. And so the staff that retired created a huge binder with all of that training compiled. So I have that. And they read all the case files. About the same time, they're creating an introductory letter about themselves and mailing that to all of their existing consumers. Our new staff inherited about 20, 25 consumers, and pretty much hit the ground running. Traveled to a couple villages with other staff, and our local DVR offers local trainings. So prior to her coming on board, Philip, Albert, and I had attended quite a few DVR trainings that were offered on students in transition and various disabilities for about a year. I think they had quarterly trainings, and I don't believe they charged us, so that was nice too. And then just ongoing, going to KNAR, and then whatever comes along that's not too costly.
Right.
So we're just on. We also belong to the National Rehabilitation Association, and we get those journals, and then whatever comes through on the KNAR or anywhere else is always forwarded to counselors, so they can participate and have ongoing training.
Thank you, Amanda. I just got a message from Joanna. For some reason, she lost audio. Joanna, look down at the bottom, and it doesn't look like from here, it doesn't look like your microphone is muted off. John, our tech person that might be able to research this for you, is not with us this morning. Wayne, do you have any ideas that could help Joanna?
If you click on the microphone, the little arrow next to the microphone, you might have switched off of your speakers. Click on that and see what speakers you're using, if you're using your computer speakers or headset.
Yeah, and Joanna, if you could call in, if you haven't called in yet, I see your name on the Zoom, but I don't know if your phone number is called in yet. So you either activate your speaker on your computer, or you can call in direct on a line, and you'll be live in the webinar.
Yeah, you'll be able to see the screen and talk. So we'll wait for you to take care of that. So I see some folks here that might be able to share with us. So Marla, would you want to share anything about, well, before we jump there, Amanda, when you were talking about all of these different activities, in terms of the actual orientation and like onboarding, about how long are you looking at in terms of thinking that, do you have a period of time before you let somebody solo alone, or are they soloing and being able to ask questions? How do you, is this been successful? Is there anything else that you know, over time you may have heard that you may want to incorporate?
I think it was about a month for full on, well, No, actually, it was about a couple of weeks when, she started. I had her put her phone on Do Not Disturb for about a week so that she could read case files. She did read everyone's case files from cover to cover as well. And then we had ongoing weekly staff meetings where we did case reviews, and Northwest Indian College too. She signed up for those right away. So she, I believe, is done. She'll be getting her certificate here if she hasn't already. And she was able to transfer, she was able to get a lot of credit toward a BA in social work at our University Alaska Fairbanks. So she is actually starting to take a class that's starting about in a week or so. And a lot of that North Indian Tribal College, all those experiences and classes, Voc Rehab 101, all the various trainings that she took, a lot of those have transferred over for credit. And then she had some existing credit. And so she's well on her way to getting a bachelor's in social work, probably, I'm going to say 2021.
Excellent. Sounds very promising.
So there's just ongoing training.
Right.
But yeah, you pretty much, take them with you, have them sit in on an intake, or just go over how you do something. You model that behavior.
Okay.
For your new staff.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, we want to hear from some other folks. I started to call on Marla Spears. I
also have a question I'll throw out there on top of this.
Okay.
Is how can, we talked about onboarding and orientation, all that stuff, and thank you, Amanda, for sharing that. And whoever else is going to share, thank you in advance. I also want to add on to that. How can AIVRTAC help you guys complete this process? Is there anything that you feel we can do to help people become more comfortable in their positions as we go through this?
Okay. Marla, I put you on the spot. Are you, do you have anything you want to share with us this morning? Jacqueline, how about you? We have a lot of quiet people here. Hello. This is
Amanda just put in the chat box that she gave her AIVRTAC website to watch the webinars and download that info. So that's good to know that you're using that. Thank you, Amanda.
We see your mouth moving, Amanda, but
yeah, I forgot to mention that. Obviously, she's oriented with the website too, and so is Philip.
Okay.
I know that came on after the fact for Philip, who's been with us for like 23, 24 years.
And when I think about this whole process, orientation and onboarding, and I think about, first experiences with people that, how frightening it is not to know what is expected, and how you may walk inadvertently into some policy and disrupt something that you had no idea that was going to happen. And, those first days, how frightening it is when you can't talk to anyone, no one seems to have the answers, and you're kind of swimming in this black hole of not knowing. And then how you can take this the checklist and the onboarding and look at how you can not only improve that, but think about how this would work toward building the training component. And that's what I think I heard Amanda saying, building the training that goes into really providing people the support they need to help them to be informed and help them to strengthen strengthening them individually so that they can perform their jobs. It looks like we have some people that are willing to chat in the chat box. Gail says, help create a realistic professional development plan for employee that's not interrupting or burdening the person. Do you want to expand on that, Gail, verbally?
Well, I think at the beginning, there's a lot of stuff they're thrown at. I mean, they're reading, they're listening, and that's a lot to comprehend. So
Right.
I noticed on your checklist, you said begin an initial development plan. I
Yeah.
think that's a good idea, but oftentimes we try to put too much in the plan at the beginning, and we should really kind of introduce them as they have already learned one skill, and then not all at once.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot to be said for that. Also, but along with that, it's like there's the other side of it where you paint the whole picture and then you start taking pieces out, like this is what the VR is about. And I think when we started off, we talked about the purpose. What is the purpose, right? And so, yes, when we're getting into the nitty gritty of their particular responsibilities, then you have to narrow it down so that they don't feel overwhelmed. But that bigger picture is necessary. And I guess when I think about taking people to KNAR and some of the other conferences, that's where we see some growth with a larger picture. Wayne has something that he's asking, but Marla, I'd like to look at Marla first. I'm still pretty new here and still learning, although I feel I'm learning everything pretty quick. This is my second webinar, and I also attended training in Seattle earlier this month, which was very helpful. I'm not able to use audio from where I am located in the office. Okay, thank you, Marla. I appreciate you providing us that. Wayne, do you have any comments you want to make on these now?
No, I like all the responses we're getting. So that raised questions for me though when I was listening to everybody. And do the programs have standard orientation or onboarding tools that they use? I know Amanda talked a little bit about her 2.5-day orientation. Does anybody else have anything standard in place that they use? And are you willing to share those checklists or tools with the programs? And also, do you walk through your policy and procedures with your staff, or do you just let them read it on their own? Those are the two questions I have. So
you can answer verbally, or you can check out the chat box. Trying to think of Winona, do you have any, this area of onboarding is kind of, I think, what I might call your specialty. Do you have any comments you would like to provide this morning? Or any questions that you may have? Okay.
She said not
Not at the moment. She has bad allergies today. Sorry about that. And thank you for joining us, even if it's a quiet join.
She says she's smoking in Flagstaff.
Yeah,
just kidding.
Yeah, they have some really bad environment stuff going on right now. Well, I think what I would like to do is I would like, I know we've provided you a checklist and we've talked about onboarding. I'd like to ask each and every one of you, like Wayne and I, when we were, as Wayne said earlier, we talked about our first experiences and walking into something where there were maybe no forms, no policies, nothing, going into a vacant place with nothing there at all. And how do you know, has anybody walked into that sort of thing? I know, Amanda, you work closely with Jackie Bisbee. So there was a period of time where there was a transition where you were being coached to take over the position. I'm going to hold on to that because I want you to think about that, because I'm going to come back to the difference between starting in a position where you're being coached for the position and starting in a position where there's absolutely no one in the office and you have no clue where to start. So, but I do want to recognize Jackie has given us something here this morning. I review policies and procedures, tribal organization, personnel policy manual, and do an orientation with a new employee the first day. I maintain to an open door policy. Okay, so an open door policy. I would ask if this individual is then, if we'll say it's a VR counselor, is there another VR counselor in the office environment? And are you creating a buddy system? Is that part of the orientation? Marla, and please, either you're welcome to answer these questions verbally or in the chat box. So where do you go from there, Jacqueline, in terms of, okay, you've gone through an orientation and that sort of thing, but what are the next steps? How long, is it a one-day thing or the first day, but then what happens after that? It's, what is the long-term onboarding? And Marla said, I did receive orientation from my supervisor, Adriana, and also received a vocational rehabilitation program process in writing that has assisted and helped me out a lot. Okay. So Marla, I'm going to ask you, how long are you still part of, how long have you been in your position? And are you working on your own now? So I've asked Jacqueline and Marla. Wayne, what do you have? What do you do?
When I started as a state VR counselor, the caseload I inherited had been vacant for about a year and a half. So there was 210 cases that hadn't been really looked at very closely and maintained or managed. So my onboarding with the state VR program I was doing training every week for about 8 hours a week. We take a whole day and train. And then the rest of the time I spent reading through the files that were in my file cabinet. That was my second day of orientation. Was here's your file cabinet, make friends with it, get to know it, hang out with it, and read every document in it. And I thought he was kind of joking around a little bit about it, trying to be a funny guy, and he wasn't. So I spent the other 32 hours of the week reading files for the first month and a half. And that probably was one of the better things that I was able to do, because I got to see how another counselor had thought about the case management process and provision of those services. The second really important tool that I use as a director and as a training person is the case file review tool, which is also on our AIVRS website. That tool is valuable in the sense that it really, as you go through it, you learn what is required in each step of the VR process in your case. And I think the hands-on part of that review is what is really helpful to the new employee. So when I was onboarding new staff as a director, we would go over all the orientation checklist stuff, But then I would hand them a case file review tool, and that was one of our training sessions. And we'd go through it together step by step and let them, allow that person to ask questions or just kind of get the feel of what a case should have in it. That's kind of what I did. And in that process, I too, like Jackie, kept an open door policy. So I'm not really sure onboarding ever ends in the VR world, to be honest with you. I think there's always new stuff every year. Things change in the VR world, whether it's disability definitions or our service area definitions change. There's something always changing, so we always have that next step that we have to learn or take into account.
And I think you bring up a really important, several important points, but one that I think is worth mentioning again is every discipline has their language. And think about the acronyms. I remember when I first started, the acronyms were just like really seriously SRC, SILC, IPE, IEP. It was such a learning curve trying to fit all the pieces in. And I think that is the other part. Are we providing, when you look at the checklist above, that's one source of trying to make sure information is being provided, but then what are the internal checklists of maybe just a specific job in terms of what are some of the other things that you really want to provide your staff to build their confidence and so that they're able to move forward and understand what does the term hospitality really mean. Do you have somebody do you have a potential consumer walk in your door and you have a staff person that isn't greeting that potential consumer or consumer of the program appropriately? What is the language that you're expecting from your personnel? How do you ask your personnel to answer a phone? We used to put little sticky notes with smiley faces on them so that we would remember to smile when we're answering a phone, because that can be heard through the phone. When I think about, I would ask each of you to, like Wayne and I have been trying to share with you some of our horror stories, and it's not necessarily something that we really, if you don't have one, but how did you, whether you have a horror story or you don't, what was it like? Do you remember what it was like when you first started your job? And were you being provided the information and the support that you needed? Were you able, that open door policy that Wayne and Jacqueline talked about, were you providing that? Was that provided to you? Or did you wait until you were in a position that you could provide it for somebody else? I'm going to ask Julie Jefferson and maybe Carol Cordova, Tanya. I don't want to try and don't want to ruin your name. Paula, I see you on the line. You want to help us out here and talk a little bit about maybe how you provide orientation and onboarding for your program and your new hires?
Most staff, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Most staff have a 90-day introductory period, and that's not a whole lot of time, as you guys are well aware of, to learn VR and to learn services and the whole process of vocation rehab. So we have a 30, 60, and 90-day onboarding, if you will. Some of the 30-day ideas are related to the Navajo Nation, the tribal processes. How do you request for travel and get approval for travel? Because, there's some things that are required by our program. For instance, for off-reservation travel, like to travel to DC and even Albuquerque and Phoenix, it has to be approved by our president's office. So there's a number of areas that we have to cover with staff that are related to just the travel process. So those we consider 30-day. And Navajo Nation has, like most programs, tribes, has its own policies and procedures. Our program, vocational rehab program, has its own policies and procedures. So those are all related to the 30-day onboarding. We do a lot of coaching, what we call coaching, where we pair them with a seasoned employee or counselor or rehab tech, whichever position they're holding. And they, in the 60-day onboarding, they do a lot of shadowing with staff, putting the policies into practice, if you will. So if the policy says, determine, has the eligibility criteria, then looking at case files on how to do eligibility. And then the last part of the onboarding is the 90-day, and a lot of that's the technical pieces, like how do we address assistive technology? How do we address other disabilities like autism and those types of disabilities, head injury, spinal cord injury. So the 90-day really gets into a lot more of the actual counseling and guidance pieces, the 60 and 90-day. If we have to, we can extend their introductory period for another 30 days to get a good evaluation of their progress. And so we have like I said, a 30-day, 60-day, a 90-day onboarding. And depending on the job position, like vocational rehab counselor or rehab tech, we have specific competencies. We go by the competencies as well. Each position has its own competencies, like voc rehab has its own competencies. So we base it on that. We utilize some of the resources that AIVRS has developed. We also utilize some of the resources that has been developed prior to, KNR, TVR Circle, those types of things. So that's how we do it, just in summary.
Mm-hmm. Excellent summary. Thank you, Paula. Very thorough, and I like the idea of the 30, 60, and 90 because a lot of times a person, you're actively involved in the next steps, and that after 30 days reviewing something, what needed to happen in the 30 days and then the 60 days and 90 days. We don't want any surprises. It's like when you're having your evaluation, and you might have a job evaluation once a year, but during that year there should be dialogue with your supervisor, and as if you are the supervisor, dialogue with your staff to ensure that there aren't any surprises if somebody's doing something well, or if they need to work on improving and strengthening something that isn't being processed according to your policy and procedures and how you do things. So I think that's a wonderful recommendation for everyone to consider that. I also, once an individual is hired, I would use some of these again in terms of long-term training, because Wayne pointed out earlier, everything in VR changes. It's almost daily. Your regulations change, O&D changes, language changes, understanding of things changes. what's happening in your own individual communities, in your nations, what's going on there that may impact how you have to process something in your program. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Wayne, if you have anything more you want to say. I think we've been trying to, there's, orientation and onboarding is very particular, and we're trying to coach our audience to give us a little bit more information. But we may need to start thinking about showing the survey and having people make sure that they fill out our survey for us so that we can improve. I'll turn it over to you, Wayne. What do you have?
So one thing that I wanted to add on when you were talking earlier about the acronyms and the alphabet soup that we have in our lingo, we do have a definition sheet or a cheat sheet, for lack of better terms, in our director's toolkit that we have on our website. So if you want to use that, it's in there. And that was always one of the toughest things that I had to deal with was learning the alphabet soup, and especially if you have people crossing over into AIVRS from other trains of work. So like I hired people from the school, special education. When they crossed over, a lot of our alphabet soup was similar to theirs, so they would get confused thinking it was something else, like the IEP and the IPE, those type of things. So it really did help understanding there. Other than that, I mean, if anybody else has any last minute questions they want to throw out there, I see Amanda put up here that TCC has a mandatory 90-day eval in place, and then annual performance reviews, and there's goals to meet with each one of those. So that's great. If anybody else has anything else they want to throw out, we can look at that. Otherwise, we can move forward. All right, so I really appreciate you guys joining us today. We have our survey link. Sorry about that. I totally blanked out for a second. And we'll try and get that into the chat box. Oh, John already did that for me. Thank you, John. So the survey link is in the chat box. Please fill that out. Give us some feedback and tell us what we need to change, if we need to change. And the next, I always like with a survey, the part that I really enjoy reading is the next topic stuff. What else do you guys want us to train on? So please provide us that information. Save the date. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just wanted to mention that as you're filling out the survey, also think about, and when you're going through that process, you might come up with, oh, I wish they would have talked about this, or I wish they would have talked about that. Create a wish list of things that maybe we missed, and so that we can focus on it the next time. We try to anticipate from our own experience, but also from things that we hear from you. Primarily, it's from what we hear from you now. So make sure that you give us a good wish list so that we can really become your partner in the education or the training that you're seeking. So back to you.
The next date we have to look at is September 24th. That's going to be our talking circle, where we have the platform for you all to share your experiences with creating your own AIVRS program and the AIVRS orientation checklist for new staff. So in the talking circle, we really enjoyed the participation from each and every one of you in bringing your program style to each other so we can share it. You've heard me say it, and other people say it all the time, that AIVRS is a great big family and we all support one another. And I think through that talking circle, that communication and the relationship building that takes place, we will remain strong in our service provision to our people. So please complete the survey. Thank you all. And I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please contact us. Here's our contact information on this slide. Email us at avrtac@nau.edu. Visit our website, please. Use our tools that we put out there. And we also put out all of our webinars for training purposes for later reference on there through YouTube. I know some people in areas have restrictions on YouTube. Maybe we can work on getting that put together and help you out with that.
And I'd like to say thank you as well on behalf of myself and Winona, that's in Smoky Flagstaff, and the rest of our team. We really, any of our webinars or any trainings that we are providing, they're based on your questions. They're all based on what you want. So think about, maybe do you want to create your own orientation and onboarding from what you heard today? Think about what it would look like for you, but please do remember to provide us the information to those unanswered questions. We really want to address that. So we wish you a cheery day. Wherever you are in your communities, Alaska, and I don't know where some of the other programs are. I know Paula's in Arizona, maybe, or maybe New Mexico. Could be in any place in the Four Corners. But say cheerio from your area. What area are you from? What state? Gail is from Alaska. I said that. And Amanda's from Alaska. Marla, I believe, is from Omaha. Let's see. Jacqueline, where are you from? I should know. I don't remember. I don't have a good memory. Oregon. Okay. And I probably said that wrong. Say Oregon, Wayne. Say 3 times.
Oregon.
Oregon. Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah. Ciao. Have a good day.